Iran has slammed the Strait of Hormuz shut again, declaring that transit through the crucial choke point will remain blocked as long as the United States maintains its blockade on Iranian ports. The announcement, made on Saturday, came just a day after Tehran had reopened the strait to commercial vessels on Friday, marking a rapid reversal that underscores the volatility of the current standoff. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most important maritime corridors. Roughly one-fifth of global oil consumption passes through its narrow waters, making any disruption a potential catalyst for sharp swings in energy prices. Iran's initial decision to reopen the strait had been welcomed by markets eager for relief after weeks of restricted shipping. However, the reprieve was short-lived. Shortly after the reopening, U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated that the American blockade of Iranian ports would remain in full force until Tehran reaches a deal with Washington, including concessions on its nuclear program. In response, Iran's Joint Military Command announced that control of the strait had reverted to its previous state, now under strict armed forces management. Iran's renewed restrictions are not merely a symbolic gesture. Senior Iranian lawmaker Ebrahim Azizi clarified that only commercial vessels authorized by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps may transit the strait, and they must pay required tolls before passage. Azizi warned that the toll mechanism could be altered if the United States attempts to disturb Iranian shipping. This stance was met with a blunt rejection from President Trump, who dismissed the idea of Iranian tolls outright, stating there can't be tolls along with restrictions. The tension escalated further when the British military reported that 2 Iranian Revolutionary Guard gunboats opened fire on a tanker moving through the strait after Iran reimposed its limits. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Centre confirmed the vessel and its crew were safe, though it did not disclose the ship's identity or destination. The incident highlighted the very real risk of military confrontation in a waterway that already sees heavy commercial traffic. Beyond the immediate maritime dispute, the broader diplomatic landscape is layered with competing signals. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh told the Associated Press that Tehran is not ready for face-to-face talks with the United States, arguing that Washington has not abandoned its maximalist position. He also dismissed Trump's claim that the U.S. would get all the nuclear dust, referring to the enriched uranium allegedly buried at damaged Iranian nuclear sites. Meanwhile, a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah militia in Lebanon appeared to be holding, creating a brief window for diplomatic outreach. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam used the pause to discuss Lebanon's readiness for negotiations with Israel, noting that the two countries have technically been in a state of war since 1948. The U.S. has invited both leaders to the White House, although no date has been set. Pakistan has also stepped into the fray. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif recently returned from a diplomacy forum in Antalya, Turkey, where he met Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Sharif discussed regional developments and the ongoing U.S.-Iran dialogue, and Pakistan is slated to host the next round of talks between Tehran and Washington early next week. The Pakistani Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, concluded a visit to Tehran, meeting senior Iranian leaders including President Masoud Pezeshkian and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Munir emphasized dialogue, de-escalation, and resolving disputes through sustained engagement, reinforcing Islamabad's role as a mediator. Adding another dimension to the crisis, Iran announced a partial reopening of its airspace after a 7-week closure caused by U.S. and Israeli strikes that began on February 28. The Civil Aviation Organization said routes over eastern Iran resumed at 7 a.m. local time, with flights expected to gradually increase, though no firm timeline was given. The move signals a tentative easing of internal restrictions even as the maritime standoff tightens. All of these developments converge on a single point: the Strait of Hormuz remains a flashpoint where economic interests, military posturing, and diplomatic maneuvering intersect. A prolonged closure could squeeze already tight global oil supplies, pushing prices upward at a time when many economies are still recovering from pandemic-era shocks. Conversely, any miscalculation, whether a stray gunboat salvo or a diplomatic misstep, could spark a broader confrontation that draws in regional allies and global powers. The situation underscores how a narrow waterway can wield outsized influence over international markets and security. As the United States insists its blockade will stay in place until a nuclear deal is reached, and Iran insists the strait will stay shut until that blockade ends, the world watches closely. The outcome will not only determine the flow of oil through Hormuz but may also shape the trajectory of US-Iran relations for months to come. In the end, the Strait of Hormuz serves as a stark reminder that geopolitical choke points are not just lines on a map, they are live wires that can trigger economic ripples and strategic shocks with little warning. The coming days will reveal whether diplomacy can untangle the knot or if the region is headed for a more turbulent chapter.